said, I'm going to start with giving you a short overview of the specific context in which Project Insight was established and some of the key objectives. And then my colleague Diederik, who's the research coordinator of this project, will talk about the outputs. So the starting point for us was gun violence. What do we know about gun violence in Europe? And in the last 8 years, we've seen a lot of research being done. Before 2015, the research on gun violence in Europe was very limited. There were a couple of studies in the Netherlands, there was a couple of studies in the United Kingdom, there was one study in Belgium. That was about it. And then since 2015, we were actually seeing more and more research that was being done at the national level, but also at the European level. In 2015, a Flemish Peace Institute published a report on firearms and violent deaths, trying to find out what data is actually available, what correlations can we find based on the data. We had a year later the FIRE project funded by the European Commission, looking at firearms trafficking routes. We had Project Safety in 2017-18, looking at the connections between terrorism and firearms trafficking. We had the same time the report from Small Arms Survey on converted weapons and how they were also linked to gun violence. We had the reports by the Flemish Peace Institute on mass shootings in Europe. And then 2 years ago, with the funding from the European Commission, we also published the findings of Project Target, specifically looking at these analyses between gun violence and firearms trafficking. So I'm just giving you some examples, but it's just a way to show you, to illustrate that a lot of research has been done really in the last 8 years. And with Project Insight, we want to take it one step further. We want to keep encouraging that kind of research because we have the objective, the ambition to support policymakers and law enforcement agencies and all other practitioners with strategic intelligence. Now, the very concrete starting point for Project Insight was actually Project Target, so the project that we did 2 years ago. The main objective there was to improve the intelligence picture on gun violence and try to see how the linkages with firearms trafficking actually take place. And there were a lot of relevant findings. You can find them all in the books that are available over there. Don't hesitate to pick up a copy and take it with you, also from the other publications. But some of the relevant findings for us was that it was very difficult to find comprehensive, detailed, and comparable official data on gun violence and on firearms trafficking in many European countries. And I know some countries are actually trying their best, trying to get better data, but in a general observation, we should say it's still a problem. And it's something that we really have to work on. What we also noticed when we were doing Project Target is that if you start triangulating different types of data, you can actually get a better intelligence picture. What did we see? For example, we did a case study on Belgium. We had the support from the Belgian Federal Police giving us some of their data that they were collecting and analyzing. We received the ballistic data from the National Institute for Criminology and Criminalistics. We looked at health data that was available, and then we started collecting media articles as well. That was a lot of work. There's a lot of shootings and incidents with guns in Belgium, and every time there was such an incident, we tended to find an article in the media about it. And these media articles were not so good in giving us information on the type of gun that was used, because most journalists do not know the difference between a pistol and a revolver, and they do believe everything is a Kalashnikov. But what these journalists do know very well is they know how to find out that the person who shot the firearm was actually the former friend of this woman who has now a new relationship. The contextual data often was there in the media sources. So we were able to use the technical ballistic data on the firearms, combine it with the media sources on contextual data, combine it with law enforcement data on victims and perpetrators, for example, and then you were able to do something. And this was for us the starting point that if we can do this in Belgium, why not be ambitious and try this for all of the European Union? Now, Belgium is a complicated country with 3 official languages. Europe, 27 member states, 24 languages. It was quite an endeavor, but we decided we should go for it. And while we were still doing it manually for Belgium, we had to find a way to do it much more efficiently for all of the European Union. So when the EU developed its new action plan on firearms trafficking, we were very happy to read that one of the key priorities is building a better intelligence picture. because we fully support that priority. And specifically in the action plan, there was also the action foreseen to explore the feasibility of rolling out an EU-level tool to track in real time firearms-related incidents and develop a permanently up-to-date picture that way. And based on our experience from Project Target, we immediately felt that going immediately to the official data is probably not possible. But what if we try to do this with the media sources? What if we try to use these media sources to get such a monitor? So this was the starting point, but it was more than just that. We didn't just want to develop a machine learning tool to track these incidents based on the media sources, but we also, of course, wanted to collect all the other data that was out there, officially available data from various government agencies, and, of course, use all of the information that we are collecting to deliver state-of-the-art knowledge products on these two specific security phenomena. So this was a starting point. We are now in December 2023. We're at the end of a 2-year cycle. I can tell you it was a very intensive 2-year cycle for everybody involved, but we're very happy that we were able to do this project with, of course, the support of the European Commission as part of the Internal Security Fund. So I want to thank the European Commission for believing in the partnership and trying to develop this product. So what does Project Insight basically want to do? We will be providing and launching today a centralized knowledge hub for cutting-edge analysis and research on gun violence and firearms trafficking in Europe. And the broader aim, of course, is to improve our strategic intelligence picture on these phenomena and to raise awareness about the problems. Because as many of you know, these phenomena are not always a priority in the different countries in Europe. And by raising awareness, we hope to also highlight how important these firearms are in facilitating various types of criminal activities. So this is really an important strategic ambition. Of course, we couldn't do this alone. The Flemish Peace Institute has been coordinating this project, but with the support from our research partners, TextGain, which is a tech company that has been developing all the AI algorithms together with us, Small Arms Survey from Switzerland, Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, and of course also Leiden University's Institute for Security and Global Affairs. Together, we have been working on this monitor, on this knowledge hub, working on these products that you can find over there on my left, on your right today. But we didn't do this alone with the research partners. We had a lot of support from our operational partners, as we call them, the law enforcement community, Europol, Dutch National Police, Belgian Federal Police, the European firearms experts, but also UNDP CSEC, who actually developed a similar monitor several years ago already, the Armed Violence Monitoring Platform, which was really an inspiration for us because we saw that what they were able to do in the Western Balkans, we said we should be able to do this as well in Europe. This was really an example for us. So we are very happy to exchange ideas, to go in contact with them, to see how we can learn from each other. And all of this, of course, with the support from Impact Firearms, because this is a crucial one. If you want to reach out to all of the national law enforcement agencies, FA and Impact are, of course, very important partners because they can help us. So thank you very much for that. And involving the law enforcement community has been really important for us. We've had 4 separate meetings specifically on these topics where we were showing what we were doing, trying to get feedback, trying to make sure that the product is workable, is feasible. But these were just the official meetings. There were, of course, a lot of other meetings, bilateral in the last 2 years, that have really helped us. So thank you for all of the people who have provided us with data, provided us with insights. So what are the main outputs? We have this real-time firearms incident monitor for all 27 EU member states. Diederik will show you how it works. We have the 8 research reports on various aspects of gun violence and firearms trafficking. We have 27 country fact sheets, just 2-pagers giving you some basic information on each country with regard to gun violence and firearms trafficking. If you're interested, they're on the poster there with the nice QR codes. You can just download them directly. And we put all of that in our new Knowledge Hub, which, in addition to what I just said, also includes specific country profiles. If you're interested to know what's going on in Romania, in Bulgaria, in Denmark, you can just go to the website and click on these countries and you get all the information almost directly. We've also collected previous studies on these security phenomena per team, per country, so you immediately know what has already been done. And we also gave a short overview of the key international legislation and the European initiatives that have been taken in that field. So all of that together basically tells me that it's time for me to tell you that today it's the end of Project Insight, but it's actually the start of Gunviolence.eu. This is the new name for the Knowledge Hub. It's a not nicer sounding than Project Insight. So the website is available since today, and we will be continuing, of course, to host it and to make sure that it improves from day to day to day. So with that being said, I'd like to give the floor to Diederik to talk a bit more about how we developed all of these products and what is coming out of it. So, Diederik.
Thank you, Niels. Good morning, everybody. As Niels said, I have the honor to present the output of Project Insight. Of course, I don't want to take the credit for all these deliverables and all these papers and the monitor that's been developed. It has been a tremendous effort from a large research team that put a lot of time in developing the monitor, developing the research papers, developing the fact sheets. So I really want to thank everybody that participated in the project for doing this tremendous job, and hopefully it can show that it's a very relevant output and a very relevant website and monitor that can be used on a broad perspective and by many actors in the field. So what I would like to do is give a short overview of the different deliverables. The output that is, as Niels has mentioned, will be made and are already available on the website. But before showing you the website, I would like to build a little bit up the tension, not only to share our excitement about the output, but also to give you an insight into the lessons learned, the lessons that we have learned throughout the development of this monitor and these research papers, on the possibilities of using the methodology that Niels just described, but also getting you a better insight of what the limitations and the caveats are when using and interpreting the data that we've been collecting or that the monitor is collecting on gun violence incidents in the EU. So a first step on the incident monitor, so I will start with describing the incident monitor, which is, let's say, the main element and the main output of the project, but by no means the only one. The first step is what we want to do is collect data on gun violence incidents across the EU in all EU member states. So the first step, and as Niels has mentioned also, we're not doing this manually, we're trying to do this automatically. So using artificial intelligence techniques to collect, interpret, analyze these data automatically and bring that into a platform that is accessible on a hopefully as real-time basis, as much real-time as possible. So what's the first step that you need to do? Identify these incidents. We have to identify incidents on firearms violence across the EU. So how are we doing this? Well, as Niels said, we're building this platform on media sources. So a first step is using an extensive list of media sources from all EU member states. So currently, we're over 350 media sources that we're analyzing, that's being brought into the monitor, and that are constantly being searched for potentially relevant articles on gun violence using a list of about 40 keywords that are translated in all official EU languages. So for each country, we have between 10 to 20 media sources that are being searched and being analyzed on a constant basis, looking for articles being published on firearms violence. This list is basically also manually composed, and that's also very important to mention. The things that are going to be seen in the output and the monitor is, of course, automatically driven, but there was a huge effort and a huge human effort being put into the development of all these different steps. So this list has been composed manually by the people in the project, but has also been validated and discussed with all the operational partners throughout the meetings that Niels also mentioned, to get better insight also for the people in the specific countries on what relevant and trustworthy sources are to be included to identify these sources. Because of course this is the first step, and this is a crucial step. This will determine which articles are to be found. A second step then is if you use a list of, let's say, 40 keywords, where you, for example, include the word shot, you have to predict whether or not an article is relevant or not. because shot can have a meaning, can refer to a firearm being shot, but it obviously can also refer to other things that are by no means related to firearms violence. So that's why we created a predicting model that helps to predict whether or not an article is junk or not junk. And the first step that we did is using a very long list of currently over 2,500 words that would allow to identify an article as junk or not junk. And it was built using the database that Niels mentioned before that we composed manually in Project Target. Based on a word frequency analysis, we could determine which words came much often in articles that were dealing with firearms violence. That resulted in a long list of about 1,500 words that were often very mentioned in media articles on firearms violence, and then additional words based also on the relevance and the expertise available in the research team. Additional words that could be seen as pointing towards firearms violence incidents were added to that list. That list, that originally was in Dutch, has been translated to all official EU languages. So we now have a long list of words in all EU languages that could help to predict whether or not an article was effectively mentioning a firearms violence incident or not. In the second step, we went a step further, and we used, and TextGain developed an algorithm to also help predicting whether or not an article was junk or not junk. And that basically was trained on a database of about 15,000 articles that the research team, not only the Flemish Peace Institute, but everybody involved in the research team were involved in all the articles that we found in the first place and see whether or not they were junk or not junk. So you had the human control being brought in, and that resulted in a database of about 15,000 articles that were identified in a monitor, but that was assessed by humans as not relevant. And training the algorithm on that database helped to, again, further the relevance of that predicting model. And thirdly, and this is, I think, the most innovative step that the project and the monitor has been taking, is the integration, and that's the current model, how it's been done now, is using large language models. And the commercialization recently in spring 2023, especially of what everybody knows now as ChatGPT, has become a very important element and has been a very important tool that has been integrated into this monitor. At the moment that it became commercially viable, we used it in the monitor in first place throughout the monitor, but in first place to identify and to predict whether or not an article refers to firearms violence or does not refer to such an incident. Using a list of about 50 keywords, ChatGPT makes an assessment, and that assessment is being brought into the monitor, and if it's assessed that it's not relevant, it's not being integrated in the monitor. Using also, again here, human controls, human assessment, and human follow-up on what ChatGPT predicts, it's almost human-like. It's almost in line with what humans would assess an article and would predict whether or not it's junk or not junk. So again, although here we have the artificial intelligence predicting and play an important role in predicting the relevance, it's again a strong and substantive human involvement and human control that has been within the project but will continue to be done in order to assess the relevance of the articles that are being predicted and included into the monitor. So that's the first step, is identify relevant articles. A second step is, of course, you want to cluster articles on the same incident, because the level of analysis is the incident, it's not the article. And of course, when it's an interesting or a highly high priority incident, you will get many articles on the same incident. And if you don't bring and group articles together, you might get an artificially high number of victims or perpetrators or incidents being mentioned in the monitor. So that's the second step. Bring those articles on the same incident, group them together. Here we used a deep learning algorithm that focuses on the level of similarity in the text. And here we also, again, very importantly, although we use an algorithm, we again determined a threshold where the similarity of text was based on, again, human assessment and human controls and human processes to decide to set a threshold at 0.75. While the similarity in text is between 0 and 1, we decided to set the threshold at 0.75 because that was seen throughout the process based on trial and error and human controls and human involvement, that was the threshold that could be the most relevant one to decide which articles ought to be grouped together and which ones are basically on other incidents. So setting that threshold relatively high means that we're not often grouping and bringing articles together that are not on the same incident, but it sometimes still is the case that articles on the same incident are not grouped together because they're being published with several days and several delays between the articles, or the language that is used is not very similar. So that's still, at the moment, a challenge. But again, here, there's been some improvements and some developments in the ChatGPT availabilities and tools that would also allow us in the near future to also strengthen this process and also strengthen the process of grouping articles together on the same incident. So this is the second step, clustering. And then the third step, and that's also very important, that's what Nils also mentioned, where the added value of media articles come in. They are for a lot of information on the context, information that might not be always available in the official statistics and in other sources. But that's also the most challenging one if you want to extract automatically relevant information out of a media article that just unstructured text. So how are you going to do it? What we are trying to do, have been trying to do throughout the project, is getting information on the context. Is it related to drugs? Is it domestic dispute? Is it a seizure? What is the context of the incident, of the media article? But also, for example, on the number and the type of weapons that have been involved, the number of victims, the age, the gender of the victim and the perpetrator, the outcome. Was it just a threat? Were there shots being fired? Was someone injured, or was someone being killed? Was someone being arrested? That information is often mentioned in an article, but it's a high challenge to get that information out in our article in an automated manner. What we originally did in this process, again using that long list of words that we composed manually, and used that as a way to tag the words in the articles, and using that tagger and using a classification to see whether or not we could find that information. For example, if in an article is referred to drugs, the word drugs, you could say, if it is mentioned several times, that it can relate as a context to a drug-related incident. So those are the ways that we try to do it in the first stages. But again, and this has proven to be a highly added value, is implement ChatGPT in this process. We used, right from the beginning that commercially viable, we used ChatGPT. Again, this has taken a lot of programming work to do it as the way that we want to do it and how to come to the output. But what basically is being done, that the articles that we collect, that we identify, are being sent to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT has been given a list of predetermined questions, like, for example, what's the age of the gender, what's the age of the victim, what's the gender of the victim, how many victims are there, what's the context of the incident. And ChatGPT subsequently is also forced to answer in a predetermined way. And that process, which has taken quite some time to develop, I must say, but resulted in a very, as shown to be a highly added value in getting all the information out of the articles. Let me, for example, say when we used the first method on age and gender of victim and perpetrator, we got about 35% of the information that was in the article out of it successfully. With ChatGPT, it's about 85 to 90%. So if it's in the article, ChatGPT often and in almost all cases manages to get the information right and get it out of the article. Of course, there's been a lot of human testing involved again and controls again to make sure that everything works as it is. But throughout the process, since the last couple of 7, 8, or 9 months, this has shown to be a really reliable way of getting all the information out of the articles in an automated manner. So to summarize, how does the model work? The pool of media sources is being scanned and continually looked for identifying the relevant articles. Articles are then labeled as junk or not as junk. They are then clustered on getting the clustering of media articles about the same incident, and then finally extracting the contextual information using the tagger and ChatGPT. And that's also how the monitor is built, and I will show you in a couple of minutes how that looks like in real life and in real time. Importantly, there's also a methodological report for those people who are interested in getting more insight. And in what I've just been mentioning, but get more insight in the technical stuff behind it. Everything is made available there as well. Also, because when you use AI, it's important to be transparent as much as possible on how the AI is implemented and how it works. What we also will be doing is generate automatically trend reports on some of the elements that we've been seeing on, for example, the number of victims, the number of perpetrators, the types of weapons that are being used. And those trend reports will also be made available on the website. And also interestingly, maybe especially from a strategic or research perspective, there will also be a possibility to extract CSV files on the information on the articles, to be put them in one Excel sheet that then can be used for scientific or for strategic reasons to do analysis on them. Also, those CSV files can be made available, but we will develop a procedure for people who are interested in getting those data after kind of a motivated request to get these CSV files on maybe specific periods, specific countries, specific types of violence to do more specific analysis on. So what are the main takeaways? And I think this is important to mention before going to the website, because these things are crucial to take into account when you're using and interpreting the data that are in the monitor. It has been shown that although there's a lot of human effort being put in this, artificial intelligence has a great potential in offering these advantages in building a better understanding of firearms violence across the EU. Artificial intelligence was, as Nils mentioned already, crucial to this effort. This is something that you cannot do manually. It took a lot of time to do this for Belgium, let alone that you do this for 27 EU member states in 24 national languages. That's virtually impossible to do with a human effort. So you need this kind of automated process, and hopefully, as I can show you in a couple of minutes, it has delivered, and it is possible to do so with these techniques. But again, and that's something that I really need to stress, there are some limitations. First of all, using media articles as a source for information is not maybe the best and the most reliable way, and also not the most comprehensive way of getting an overview of gun violence. Not all gun violence incidents are being reported on. So it's by no means a comprehensive instrument to get a comprehensive overview of gun violence in the EU. And moreover, and Nils also mentioned that before, they're not necessarily factually correct information that are included in the media articles, especially when you refer to the types of weapons that are used. Journalists are not the best in getting the information right on that, but on other information types, they are very irrelevant to get the information out of the articles. The same is for the use of AI. As said, AI is not 100% accurate, so there will be articles in the monitor that are not firearms violence incidents, and vice versa. We will miss some articles on firearms violence that are not included in the monitor. But again, if you do that on a human by humans, you will get the same issues. But there will always be a gray area where you have discussions whether or not an article is relevant to be included in the monitor. So this is relevant to AI, but this is also relevant when you do this on a human level. Secondly, what's also relevant with regard to AI is the language issue. We have 24 official languages in the EU, which always is a challenge to do that in a comprehensive manner. This language was also an important challenge in this respect. And a third, but I already mentioned that, is the issue of clustering. That's always difficult to cluster articles together. When they're very close to each other on a time-wise, it's okay, but if there are longer periods in between, then it becomes a little more challenging to do so. Again, as I said, we're trying to do this, and in the near future, we'll also use this with ChatGPT, and this will improve the clustering reliability, but this will always be a challenge when you have different articles over different time periods to have them being integrated on the same incident level. And again, and this is something that I hope I've made clear throughout my presentation, the role of human intervention cannot be overstated in this process. It's basically garbage in, garbage out. The centrality of expert knowledge on firearms violence that was present in the research team and among the operational partners, combined with the technical knowledge, was crucial. You need both to come to a successful product. And that was a crucial understanding. And as I said, there has been a substantial human involvement and intervention throughout the whole project, and that will remain necessary. As long as the monitor is running, we still need to have human controls throughout the time. That will decrease, obviously, but you will still need to control what's coming out and what the artificial intelligence is saying in the monitor. there will always be a human in the loop, and that's a crucial element. But again, and in all, I would like to end with this part with saying, I think the combination of the uncommon human expertise on firearms that was present and is present in the research team and the consortium, and the technical innovation with, as I said, using ChatGPT at the moment that it became commercially viable, has created at this time a unique instrument that we hope can be very relevant in the objectives that Niels also mentioned. So before going to the website itself, very shortly, as said, another output and deliverable are the research reports. You have a thematic focus where the teams were also decided in cooperation with the European Commission, FA and Impact, also to guarantee the relevance of these topics, where we integrate various sources to build that in-depth understanding of the topic, existing research, official data, data collected through the monitor, through previous studies. They've all been integrated in those research reports. I think they will be discussed throughout the sessions this morning, so I will not go into detail, but you can find them up front as well. There are 8 papers that I think everyone can be very proud of that they've been published and they've been written. The country fact sheets, as Niels mentioned already, for each EU member state, we have that very handy overview of some key indicators. We try to standardize them as much as possible, so you can get a kind of comparative overview of the EU member states on the data and the indicators, but also which data are available in what country and which data are not available. So that might also be interesting to see where data are available and which data are not available, maybe also to learn from each other and to see what kind of data some countries have made available and some have not been able to bring out and to publish. These fact sheets have also been controlled and validated by national contact points, and there's also possibility foreseen, of course, to keep updating these data based on new data that become available and that are shared with us. This is how the fact sheets look like. So you have principal 8 categories on the front and the back, discussing some key indicators on gun violence, like evolution of homicides and accidents, the number of mass shootings, firearm victims, suspects are here, information on the number of seizures, and some information on trafficking and possession, legal possession of firearms in a country, which would, on a glance, can give you a good overview on some of the key indicators of gun violence in a specific country. But they can also be consulted up front. Having said that, I now will try to go to the website. So this is the website. As Niels said, it's no longer Project Insights. It's Gunviolence.eu, where you can find all the information. As Niels said, we are trying to build that one-stop shop with all the information included on, relevant information included on firearms violence, where you have legislation and policy, where you can find relevant information on the international framework, like the United Nations Firearms Protocol, the UNPOA, the Arms Trade Treaty, some EU legislation links to that. Also, research is here made available, research that we know of that have been published on criminal gun violence, domestic gun violence, mass shootings, trafficking. People interested in knowing and finding information and finding studies on a general level, on the EU level, on these topics can very easily consult that information here, and also if the information and reports are publicly available, are put in full publication on this website as well. A third element is, as what Niels also mentioned, is that we no longer have that, not only have that EU perspective on a general level, we also have that national country level perspective. So for each country in the EU, we have developed a separate page where all that information that's in here is also made available. So when you go, for example, to the country profile of Belgium, if you're interested in knowing only specific on the Belgium level, you will get the monitor, which I will come in a minute. You will get access to the monitor, but directly focusing on the Belgian level. But more specifically, and more interestingly, maybe you get a link, possibilities to see a link to the different relevant official data sources, provided that they're available, because we've selected a list of media, of official statistics that we deem to be relevant and we think that are relevant to be included, like crime statistics, judicial statistics, information on seizures, information on causes of death, information on hospital admissions. if these data are available, they can be accessed via this website. And similarly, like we have the research papers and the research page on a general EU level on the front page, on the home page, you have the same on the country level. So for each country, there is an overview of country-specific studies that focus on firearms violence and firearms trafficking in that country. Of course, this is based on our own best effort of finding and identifying these articles. There was also a very explicit link foreseen. If there are some data that we're missing, if there are some studies that we're missing, please do not hesitate and reach out to us to send us that information so it can be included on the website. And at the bottom, you can also access, again, the fact sheet. And last, but probably not least, I would like to go to the incident monitor, which I've been talking to you about for quite some time. And this is it. So as you can see, we now have data in the monitor starting from the 1st of January 2023. So for the 2023, all the information that we found are made available in the monitor. We've also collected data from 2019 to 2022, but because we have made some changes to also the selecting and the identification process, we're still in the process of going through these data again and making sure that the information in there is accurate. And those years will gradually also be included in the monitor, but for now, information on the whole of 2023 is available, explicitly until today. So because it's being scraped on a continuous basis, information is being brought into the monitor almost directly at the moment that the articles are published. Meaning if an incident occurs in the morning, is being reported in the morning, it will be in the monitor by the afternoon. So you indeed get this real-time monitor and an overview of incidents that are occurring. As you can see in the above, you can select, you can select specific countries where you can zoom into. And I will try to make some examples to also very clearly show you how the different steps work in practice. Not the most ideal way of working. So you can see that you can go very specifically on the map, and then you can go to the feed, and this is like the substantive part where you can see on the left, you can see all the articles on the incident. It was an incident in Austria that took place about 2 weeks ago, where a young man shot his mother, and where you can see on the left side, you can see all the articles that have been published on that incident. As you can see, they're all clustered together, so they're leveled at on the level of one incident, which you can see are quite some articles. So if you would not cluster them, you would have like 7 or 8 incidents mentioned in the monitor, while it's only one incident. And the blue box is what we see as the third step that I mentioned, is the contextualization, is getting the information on the context out of the articles. So you can see the perpetrator was a 31-year-old male, the victim was a 55-year-old woman, their family, they're related. The context, it was a domestic dispute, it happened in the domestic sphere. One person was killed, one person was arrested. There was information on the weapon. It was said it was a shotgun. And there is a short summary of the incident. And this is also, all these things are being done automatically. And the information in the blue box is the information that can afterwards also be included on an aggregated level in these CSV files. So you can see that we're able, using ChatGPT and using the monitor, to extract a lot of relevant information out of the article that gives you some contextual context and contextual information on the nature of the incident. There is also a long list of keywords underneath, This is actually the words that, using the long list of words that I mentioned before, are being identified by the artificial intelligence in the text. And we include this for transparency reasons. It's important for people to see how the AI has been identifying and has been contextualizing information. So that's why you can see that long list of words that's being included underneath. And this is, I think, as you can see, there are a lot of incidents that have been taking place. Maybe just to end, because I think it will be probably time to end my presentation overview. This is just another incident where somewhere in the south of France, someone was sent to court and sent to prison because he used a firearm against some firefighters a couple of years ago. So it's a trial. And that was one of the challenges, to get the distinction between what happened in real life and a trial case. And that's also been strongly ameliorated. And here we can see that you can identify it as a trial, as you can see, and that it's not a direct incident that occurred yesterday or today, but it's a trial case. But again, which could also be relevant information to know on trial cases that have been taking place on firearms incidents. But again, you can see the perpetrator is a male. The age of the perpetrator is not mentioned in the articles, so we're not able to identify the age, so you have a question mark. The same with the victims. There's no information, specific information on the number of victims. But we see that there have been some shots fired using a starting gun or a pistol, and that one guy was arrested and sent to trial. So these, in all, to summarize, these just to give you two short examples of how the monitor works, what it can do, how it can do that in real life and real time, and that information hopefully might be interesting for everyone to work with and to get a better overview and intelligence picture of incidents taking place across the EU. That was it. Those are the main instruments. I hope that you can share our excitement with these tools, but at the same time, be always aware of the limitations of using not only the information based on media sources, but also the automated process, where inevitably there will always be some limitations connected to using those techniques and those methods. Thank you. Niels?
Thank you, Diederik. I've seen a lot of people sitting here looking at their phone. Usually that's a bad sign. I think in this case it's a good sign. I think you might be excited in what we're actually doing. As Diederik has mentioned, it's been quite a long process. It's been really intensive trying to get this thing done. A lot of interaction between the algorithms and the humans. And what we have now, I think, is something that 2 years ago we could only dream of, to have something like this. What is interesting in this specific case also is the fact that we can do a lot more research based on it. It can also encourage, for example, law enforcement agencies to look for their own country, to look for what is going on in their country and try to triangulate it with the data that they have, the official data. So this is a starting point, and we encourage everybody in this room to take a look at it, to explore, to tell us if we're missing something. And in the meantime, of course, we're going to keep working on this issue and try to make it better. As Diederik said, we have data from 2019 on. We're cleaning it, we're making sure it gets available as well. And in the end, of course, I think what we hope to do is really encourage more research.